Hey, welcome back to 45 News Utah. We're going to run down Joe Biden's $4 plus trillion bill he's going to propose tomorrow, and what's pretty much in it from what we can understand so far. The first part of the 4.4 whatever trillion-dollar bill is 2.25 trillion in direct spending. So they get to spend 2.25 trillion dollars right off the bat, and there's a $400 billion extra added on top of that for clean energy. So they get a tax credit of $400 billion. That's so much money, guys. So much money. You just 400. We used to do bills in the millions and billions. Now we're in the trillions. So that's almost a $500 million in clean energy taxes going out. Okay, let's break it down. 650 billion for infrastructure. So yeah, over a $500 billion. This doesn't really make sense because the numbers kind of don't add up too much because there's a lot of other stuff added in. It's going to be a lot more. It's going to be four trillion. But the 2.25 trillion is just in direct spending they can spend immediately on this monstrosity of a debt bill that's going to be crammed down all of our throats, and we're going to have to deal with the repercussions of this insanity. And the Wall Street guys are going to be jumping up and down. Record stocks going through the roof and wonder why. So they're going to have 400 billion in clean energy tax relief. So they're just not going to pay taxes. That's just how it is. I say you don't pay back a bill. You don't pay it back when you. Anyway, that's $500 million, half a trillion. It's hard to decide between trillions and billions. Okay, like I said, $650 billion in infrastructure. Yeah, well, that's going to be just insane. 300 billion for housing. And that's basically, so $300 billion, over a $250 billion is going towards HUD and USDA loans. I don't know if they're trying to just turn everything into a massive metropolis to fill, millions that are going to come here or whatever their deal is. They're just trying to get people into houses. I have no idea what their deal is, but they're just going to keep pumping this in the housing market until we run out of water, or people just decide this is insane and it's just not going to work because the economy's not going to live. Because right now it's basically on life support, and it's just we're just not competing, in the global trade. There's a lot of that's going to go down. So anyway, just you ain't be able to pay the money back. They're not going to be able to. So just spending crazy. Okay, so 300 billion for manufacturing. Yeah, right now they're getting 70 to 110 million in help. They can apply for 70 to 100 million. He's going to propose over $250 million for manufacturing. I mean, I don't know if anybody's worked. If you work a manufacturing job, it's a tough job. It's really tough to work in a manufacturing facility. It really is. And he's going to put $300 billion towards manufacturing in the United States. I don't know if he's trying to compete with China, but I don't see a lot of Americans piling into a factory that's going to pay you $12 or $13 an hour, and you're not going to be able to survive anyways off that wage without being subsidized, because rentals $1,300 for an apartment. I mean, to rent a house is just ridiculous. To buy a house is ridiculous. We'll get into that later. Another segment I got to do on that. That's going to be talking about how the money got sopped up by the interest rate, but then they just sopped it up with the exploding price of housing costs. Now they're raising the price of lumber because they're screaming too that their houses are too expensive, and blah blah blah. On and on it goes, just milking the trillions and trillions being thrown in every direction. Okay, on to 300 billion for the electric grid. Private entities, they use a public utility, so they make your utility price goes up. Okay. We're going to throw $300 billion at them. $300 billion. It's insane. Just insanity. It's beyond insanity. It's like trying to figure out why your bill is so high and why it keeps going up, and the cost of living just keeps going up, and then you get a $300 billion shot in their arm on top of that. And believe me, this time the plunger will actually work when they get the shot. $300 billion to the electrical grid. That's going to probably be for any electromagnetic pulse. So being that we just give them $300 billion. What, budgets used to be signed with back in the day, just a few years ago. It was a $300 budget bill we'd spend. 300 billion is a lot of money. And, what was the cost of the wall that was estimated? Who cares about that now? So realistically, we up the grid and they need to bring their prices down so it's affordable to Americans. How does that sound? We pay this back anyways, by the way. So this is you. Then they're just a private entity. Usually a global corporation anyways. Just not capitalism. You don't give a power grid, the power company that's using public grids, and then they keep raising the rates, and then you just hand them $300 billion in upgrades. So with no benefit to the taxpayer. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money, guys. $400 billion for home caretakers and care for elderly and disabled. $400 billion. How do you even consider $400 billion? I mean, I understand. I do. But is this for people that qualify for this? Where is this money going? The elderly and disabled. If there's money being given out. So now we put almost $500 billion. $500 billion. Yeah. If we give a, yeah. And I'm looking at it right now. Yeah. So if we give $500 billion, nearly $500 billion, for the elderly and disabled and home caretakers, why are the insurance companies going to charge? Insurance companies going to charge for home health care out the wazoo. Just throwing that out there, And again, the elderly and disabled, it's for them. Is that all going to be free? We're talking about $400 billion. Does anybody get this? I mean, I can't look at it and say, this is not a major fleecing of the taxpayer. I mean, is this going to be grant money? Is it going to be paid back? Or is the people that are really struggling going to get help? That's what my question is. Is it all going to be free? That's almost $500 billion with a T trillion dollars. Next time somebody with a disabled child needs something, there's $400 trillion going into that. How much is the insurance companies of Medicare and all that going to pay on top of this? Or going to be charged for this? Or how much are they going to pay out of pocket? When $400 trillion, I have no idea what he's talking about, where he's going to spend it at. I have no idea, just funny money everywhere. Just funny money everywhere. You cannot run a country like this. This is, 1 trillion, 2.5. What is the other? Okay, now it's probably going to be what is the other $2 trillion going for? I guess Biden tomorrow is going to tell us. Now, if they accept this monstrosity the way it is, I don't know if they're just throwing a bunch of, shims under the board until it matches, the level they want. But, manufacturing, $70 to $100 million or $110 million to $300 billion. But it's going to be stretched out over a certain amount of time. We know all this about bills. They don't stretch it. Private contractors, private companies are going to be after this money like coyotes on a rabbit. They're gonna hunt it down. They're gonna hunt that money down. This is what is going to drive the stock market. This is what drives investment. This is where lobbying comes in. We have like millions and millions of people homeless. Just millions. We have people suffering everywhere. People barely making rent. People working for garbage ghetto wages. Insurance is too high. Why don't you just raise Medicaid to anybody under $80,000 a year? Because it's going to make no difference where you are, California or here. It's just now you've made the rest of the country California. I mean, really think about that. Why don't they just universal health care? You know what? You're he's going to be at $6 trillion, 6 trillion with a T. I don't care if this thing says over a 4-year period. These guys couldn't hold money like if it's in their hands, it's gonna be gone. It just doesn't matter. They don't care. They don't care about what money to spend. So which brings me on to my topic. But well, we better last but not least, I'm gonna dig on California. Okay, Governor Newsom's a total dirtbag. He screwed the whole state up. They're trying to recall him. I don't know what even happened to that. So California's going to get $42 billion to help recover their economy. So want to know where this $42 billion, the entire budget for the state of Utah is 52 or 50 something billion. This is just free money. This is just like, here you go. Yeah, you screwed your state, half people left. Here you go. So they have, me and you and all of us have to give California $52 billion to keep healthcare workers on the job. Newsom screwed the state up. He just flat screwed it up. Just a disaster there. It's a disaster. It's a disaster. It's always been a disaster. It's just been getting worse. It's just a cesspool. They got people pooping in the streets. They got IV needles up and down the roads. I mean, the whole place is just a disaster. It's running like garbage. Nancy Pelosi, thank you for making your completely garbage agendas just spread throughout the West. Spread throughout the West. Just telling you. And K through 12 gets a bunch of this money. When have they ever really cared about the kids? You know, unless it's to do with money. I mean, realistically, schools are overcrowded constantly. That it's just we're one of the worst countries in the world as far as education. Well, the modern countries. Just to keep their economy afloat, we had to give these the fourth largest economy in the world is California. We had to give them $42 billion worth of beef. These bills used to be in the millions, okay? Just in the millions, just to kind of help things out. But you got to think about that. We had to give them money to, and another part of this, you guys want to hear this, this is just totally insane. The insanity never stops. Emergency rental assistance was included. $42 billion is a lot of money, guys. It's a huge amount of money. But emergency rental assistance. And anyway, I gotta turn this real quick. Got a call coming. Emergency rental assistance and help for rental property owners to cover their costs. Just let that sink in. We're going to pay people to recover their costs on rentals they can't get money out of because people just got let go or quit working because they're afraid of COVID. And we're going to cover their losses. The realization, there's a huge population, a huge portion of California left. Believe me, everybody I talk to, you know, they're just running. They just run. So is this to cover, you know, rental property losses? Is this to cover losses in housing because these people sold their house in California and ran? You know, I don't think everybody's trying to get into California anymore. I think that California's population is actually decreasing unless there's something coming up that's just bringing in a massive flow of people to fill those spots. But then you have to pay for that because, you know, we don't have, you know, computer techs. We don't have, unless we're bringing in people to fill those positions and blah, blah, blah. Still shouldn't be able to cover the cost. We shouldn't be covering the cost of, they lost some money on rentals. This is free market. Their state went to garbage. It's all Newsom's fault. They messed the whole damn state up, locking everything down. He just went berserk. He's a total troll. And now we have to fork out $42 billion. We're going to be solving cancer. That'd be kind of a great expenditure of $42 more billion. Or how about the $300 billion for manufacturing? Why don't we just take the $300 billion with a B and do what we did to COVID on cures for cancer? You know, imagine if cancer got $300 billion in research. We just put out this huge find the cure. How about the $400 billion in clean energy tax? Let's just give that $400 billion. right to cancer, hepatitis, cancer, HIV, with a B, 400 billion, half $500 billion. You know, $2 trillion is the GDP of the United States a year. So, just putting that out there. We shouldn't be doing this. This is insanity on steroids. Stupid on steroids. Stupid on steroids. That's what this is. Just complete stupidity. Anybody's on board with this, you're nuts. You're just nuts. You need to probably really step back and take a big freaking thought about what's happening, because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, and expecting a different result. So while we throw all this money into these fake, funny fiat debt money that you owe and I owe into this economy that is in trouble, why they're still shelling out $400,000 houses. It's nuts. Okay, to go back to the 2% interest rates on the housing. Let's go to the housing market for a minute. They're going to have to give out billions in housing, federal HUD loans, just to cover the inflated cost of mortgages. So when the interest rate's at 2%, people are supposed to make better, have a better home, lower price. It's supposed to be better that way. That way they can purchase their home. They only pay 2% interest rate. Remember, that's where money back interest. And a lot of that goes to the banks got the money for free anyways. So, or investors from the federal government, whatever, lend out. A lot of people do that. They just get money from the government, just throws it every direction. But if you think about the 2%, we're supposed to be better off. I mean, this is supposed to help people. But instead what happened is the sponges came in. This is you gotta remember, this is a non-free market. This is a communist injection that's been going on. It's not capitalism, free market. This has been an injection of $5-10 trillion of funding money in every direction. So the sponges came in, they dropped the interest rate, and they just started the investors and all that, and the corporations and the private entities and everybody else started just sucking up all this money, because now from a 4% went to 2%. So they're like, oh, you can pay less a month, get a bigger house. No, that wasn't the case. So they sucked up what was there. So that money does go back into some people's pockets. Now you got to remember the bigger, group conglomerations of investors. They're not always American, and a lot of the money will leave the country because, they invest in building houses and they sell them and subdivisions or whatever. But this is meant to help the American people buy houses for a lower interest rate. And when you take that away, like they did, they just saw the opportunity to suck up the rest of that cash by just raising the price of your average house. No way to win. You really got to have a way to win here. There has to be an end game to this. There's no end game. They're going to throw $300 billion into HUD, and the building's just going to continue. And they threw another, $300 billion into manufacturing. We throw that into manufacturing. The Chinese can build anything for next to nothing. Without tariffs to balance out the manufacturing, you're just basically throwing $300 billion of the B into a toilet, because you could be outpriced by everybody. It's labor. It's about tariffs and labor. So if they keep the tariffs high, then we can compete. Throwing money at manufacturing isn't going to help manufacturing. Not to mention there's a huge population of people who don't want to work in a factory. They still don't want to go to work. They still get federal unemployment. So that's my spew for the day. Hope you guys enjoy the show. It's just a quick update or a quick talk. This is my talk time. Just give you guys an idea what's happening as far as financially, and Biden's big plan he's going to announce tomorrow. I can't wait to see what's in it. That's $2.25 trillion that he's talking about right there, plus the $400 billion in extra clean energy tax. And we should list all the things that's going wrong with our own, individual problems we have, and then see what they're throwing towards this and where this is actually going to go. So we need to be up to date on what's happening instead of people jump for joy for a stimulus check, which we all need the stimulus check, which should be at the forefront. They should take this, instead of throwing this $300 billion to housing, it ought to be cut down to $1 billion or $100 billion. Cut the other manufacturing down to $100 billion. We don't need to be throwing money into manufacturing. They need to compete, and that's through tariffs and the ability to produce product cheaper. And if you don't pay a good enough wage, people just ain't going to be there. Just you can't unless you federally. So it's just a circle. You have to subsidize the workers to stay there, and it's just a never-ending circle. Manufacturing need to pay enough to keep people employed. Tariffs need to keep the trade fair and balanced. We need to be working on trade deals with other countries, which is, our basically our GDP needs to go back up, and that's what tariffs did. And then $400 billion for home health care providers and elderly and disabled. That every bit of that should be free. Now, $400 billion, $500 billion nearly thrown right into that. I don't want to hear anybody complain. They should never charge nothing for any of that anymore until the $400 billion runs out. And then there should be checks and balances on where that money's going. Who's it going to? Is it just going to the healthcare providers for exorbitant amount of money, or are they negotiating the prices of this stuff that they need, and getting a fair value with an actual, someone involved in negotiations to bring healthcare costs down? That's what we should be working on. Okay, well, there's the rundown, you guys. Got to call my son back. He just called. Thanks for watching 45 News Utah. Hope you guys have a great night. I'll be back in a little bit with another commentary. Just remember, I'm an actor for all legality purposes. Have a great night.